When my mother died, I asked for a week to grieve. My husband's mother said, he doesn't want you there. I smiled, fine. I rewrote the will, excluding them. They learned I inherited everything, including their share. Look, I never thought I'd be the type to air my family drama on Reddit, but honestly, y'all are gonna flip when you hear this one. Grab your favorite drink and settle in, because this story is wilder than a Black Friday sale at Target. So picture this, I'm 32, been married to my husband Jake for about 8 years. We met in college, the whole sweet romance thing, you know? His family seemed cool at first, especially his mom Linda. She was one of those Southern hospitality types who'd bring you sweet tea and act all concerned about your well-being. Should have known it was all for show. My mom? She was my absolute rock. Single parent who worked 3 jobs to put me through school, never missed a soccer game, the whole 9 yards. We talked every single day, even after I got married. She was the type who'd text me random memes at 2 a.m. and somehow always knew when I needed to hear, "You got this, kiddo." About 2 years ago, Mom got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. If you know anything about that beast, you know it's basically a death sentence wrapped in false hope. The doctors gave her 6 months, maybe 8 if we were lucky. She fought like crazy though, went through chemo, radiation, tried every experimental treatment we could find. I spent every weekend driving the 4 hours to her place, helping with appointments, cooking meals, just being there. Jake was supportive at first, I'll give him that. But as months went on, I could feel the tension building. His family started making little comments about how I was never around anymore and how I was neglecting my duties as a wife. Linda would make these passive-aggressive remarks like, well, I guess family dinner isn't important to everyone when I'd miss Sunday gatherings to be with Mom. The thing is, Jake's family is loaded, like country club membership, multiple vacation, homes, drive BMWs like their Honda Civics loaded. They own a chain of furniture stores across 3 states, and Linda never lets anyone forget it. Meanwhile, my mom was a school secretary who drove a 2008 Honda Accord until the day she died. Different worlds, you know? Update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support so far. Some of you are asking about the inheritance situation. Trust me, it gets so much crazier. Should I have seen the red flags earlier? Probably, but hindsight's 2020, right? Mom's condition got worse fast. By month 10, she was in hospice care and I was basically living between her place and mine. I'd drive up Monday morning, stay until Wednesday, come home to do laundry and handle work stuff, then drive back Friday through Sunday. It was exhausting, but she was my mom. What else was I supposed to do? That's when Jake started getting really weird about it. He'd make comments like, she's dying anyway, why are you torturing yourself? Or, you're being selfish, what about us? I tried explaining that this was literally the last time I'd ever have with her, but he just didn't get it. His mom had been hovering around forever. He couldn't imagine losing that constant presence. Linda made it worse. She'd call Jake while I was at Mom's place and fill his head with all kinds of garbage. She's choosing her mother over her marriage. A good wife puts her husband first. This is what happens when you marry beneath your station. Yeah, she actually said that last one. Jake told me about it during one of our fights like it was supposed to make me see reason. The final weeks were brutal. Mom was in and out of consciousness, and I basically moved into the hospice facility. Jake visited maybe twice, stayed for like an hour each time, spent most of it on his phone. His family? They sent a fruit basket, a $40 fruit basket, from Harry and David, like Mom was some business associate. Then came the call I'd been dreading. It was a Tuesday morning about 6 a.m. The nurse said Mom had passed peacefully in her sleep. I sat there holding her hand for I don't know how long, just crying and talking to her like she could still hear me. The funeral home came, did their thing, and suddenly I was alone in that sterile room planning a funeral. I drove home in a daze, called Jake from the car, told him Mom was gone, that I needed him. You know what he said? Okay, well, we'll figure out the arrangements when you get home. Not, I'm sorry for your loss, not, I love you, just logistics. Should have been my first clue about what was coming. When I got home, Jake was watching SportsCenter, eating cereal. He gave me this awkward pat on the shoulder and asked if I wanted coffee. I told him I needed a week, maybe 2, to handle the funeral arrangements and just grieve. This was my mother we're talking about, the woman who raised me single-handedly and loved me unconditionally. That's when he dropped the bomb. Actually, Mom thinks it would be better if you handle this stuff on your own. Give us some space to process everything. I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Process what? They barely knew my mother existed. I asked what he meant by us, and he got all shifty. Started talking about how the whole situation had been stressful for the family and how they needed time to adjust to the new normal. I'm standing there, still in the clothes I wore to watch my mother die, and this man is talking about his family's stress levels. Then Linda showed up. Just walked right into my house without knocking, like she owned the place. She had this fake, sympathetic expression on her face, the kind you see at political rallies. Oh, honey, she said, I'm so sorry for your loss. But Jake doesn't want you here right now. You understand. I honest to God thought I was having a nightmare. My mother had been dead for less than 12 hours, and my husband's family was kicking me out of my own house. I asked Jake if this was really what he wanted, if he was really choosing his mommy over his grieving wife. He couldn't even look at me. Just mumbled something about taking some time and letting everyone heal. Linda jumped in with, it's really for the best, dear. You need to focus on your mother's affairs, and we need to focus on our family. That's when something just clicked inside me. I looked at both of them, Jake avoiding eye contact like a guilty teenager, Linda with her fake concern and barely hidden smugness, and I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in weeks. Fine, I said. Absolutely fine. Linda looked surprised, like she'd expected me to beg or throw a fit. Jake finally looked up, probably relieved that I wasn't going to make a scene. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. Update. Okay, some of you are messaging asking if I had a plan all along. Honestly, no. But sometimes the universe just hands you the perfect setup, you know? And when your own husband kicks you out after your mom dies, well, that changes a person. What would you have done in my situation? See, here's what Jake and his precious family didn't know about my mom. Yeah, she was a school secretary who drove an old Honda and shopped at Walmart. But my mom was also smart as a whip and had been investing since she was 25. She lived modestly not because she had to, but because she wanted to build something for the future. For me. Every month, Mom put money into index funds, bonds, real estate investment trusts. She bought a duplex in 2008 when the market crashed, then another one in 2012. By the time she got sick, she owned 4 rental properties, had a retirement account worth more than most people make in 5 years, and had been quietly building wealth for decades. But the real kicker? 3 years ago, when Jake and I were having some marriage troubles. Different story for another day. Mom had suggested I might want to think about protecting my future. She'd helped me open my own investment accounts, showed me how to build credit independently, taught me things his family probably thought were too complicated for my simple brain to understand. The week they kicked me out was the week I buried. My mother settled her estate and learned exactly how much she'd left me. $2.4 million. Not Bezos money, but enough to never worry about anything ever again. Enough to buy and sell Jake's family's little furniture empire twice over. I spent those 2 weeks in Mom's house, going through her papers, meeting with lawyers, and learning that my modest, quiet mother had been a secret millionaire. She'd also left detailed instructions about her final wishes, including some very specific thoughts about my marriage. There was a letter, handwritten, that I found in her desk. She'd written it after her diagnosis, sealed it in an envelope marked, "For my daughter, if things don't work out the way I hope." Mom always was good at reading people. The letter basically said she'd been watching Jake and his family for years, had seen how they treated me like hired help instead of an equal partner. She'd noticed how they made me feel small, how they dismissed my opinions, how they acted like I should be grateful for their acceptance. The letter was full of love, support, and some very practical advice about what to do with the inheritance if I ever found myself alone. One of her suggestions? Update my will immediately to reflect my new circumstances and priorities. So that's exactly what I did. Went to the lawyer Mom had recommended, a sharp woman who specialized in protecting assets from unfortunate family situations. We spent 3 hours going over everything: the inheritance, my marriage, Jake's family's attitude, and what I wanted to happen if something happened to me. Under the old will, Jake would have gotten everything if I died. Under the new one, everything goes to a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing education, with a small provision for my cousin Sarah, who'd always been like a sister to me. Jake and his family? Not a penny. But here's where it gets really good. Remember how I mentioned Jake's family owns furniture stores? Well, they'd been having some financial troubles lately. Nothing catastrophic, but enough that they'd been talking about bringing in investors or maybe selling one of the locations. Linda had been dropping hints about how family money might be the best solution, how it would be nice to keep everything in the family. They'd also been assuming that when my mom died, there might be a little inheritance coming their way. Nothing huge, but maybe enough to help with their business problems. Jake had actually asked me about it a few months before Mom passed, wanted to know if there would be anything left over after funeral expenses. The day I came back home after my 2-week exile, Jake was waiting with flowers and an apology. Big speech about how sorry he was, how grief makes people do crazy things, how his family had been trying to help but went about it wrong. Linda was there too, with a casserole and crocodile tears about how they'd misunderstood the situation. I let them finish their little performance, accepted the flowers, even thanked Linda for the casserole. Then I sat down and asked Jake if he'd missed me, if he'd realized what he'd thrown away. He went into this whole thing about how much he loved me, how family is everything, how we needed to stick together, especially now that it was just us. Then he asked the question I'd been waiting for. So, how did everything go with your mom's estate? I know money's probably tight with all the medical bills and funeral costs. I smiled that same smile from 2 weeks earlier. Actually, it went really well. Much better than expected. Update. Y'all are blowing up my DMs asking what happened next. Did they figure it out right away? Did I tell them everything? The drama is just getting started, trust me. But here's a question for you. How long would you have waited before dropping the bomb? Jake perked up immediately. Oh good, that's such a relief. I was worried you might be stressed about finances on top of everything else. So caring, right? Linda chimed in with, "That's wonderful, dear. Family should take care of family. I'm sure your mother would want you to be comfortable." I nodded thoughtfully. She definitely wanted me to be comfortable. She was very specific about that, actually. Well, Jake said, getting that eager look he gets when he thinks money might be involved. Maybe now we can think about some of those renovations we've been talking about, or even help out Mom and Dad with the store situation. There it was, not even pretending to care about my grief anymore, straight to how my mother's death could benefit his family. I'd been married to this man for 8 years, and he was sitting in our living room calculating how to spend my dead mother's money. Actually, I said, Mom was very specific about what she wanted me to do with the inheritance. She left detailed instructions. Linda leaned forward like a hawk spotting prey. How thoughtful of her. What kind of instructions? Well, first she wanted me to make sure I was protected, financially independent. She was very concerned about that. Jake laughed, actually laughed. Protected from what? We're married, babe. What's yours is mine, right? That's interesting you should say that, because Mom also wanted me to think carefully about who deserves to benefit from her life's work. She was very specific about character, loyalty, and how people treat family during difficult times. The room got quiet. I could see the wheels turning in both their heads, probably wondering if they'd been too obvious about their money grubbing. She also suggested I update my will to reflect my new circumstances and priorities. Jake's face went white. Your will? Why would you need to change your will? Well, when someone inherits $2.4 million, it's probably smart to make sure it goes to the right people if something happens. The silence that followed was beautiful. Linda's mouth fell open like a cartoon character. Jake just stared at me, processing what I'd said. 2.4 million? He whispered. Yep. Turns out Mom was a lot smarter with money than any of us realized. She lived modestly, invested wisely, bought real estate at the right times. She was basically a secret millionaire. Linda found her voice first. Well, that's wonderful. What a blessing for the family. I said. The thing is, Mom was really clear about what constitutes family. She wrote me a letter with her thoughts about my marriage, my relationships, and who she thought deserved to benefit from her hard work. Jake was staring at me like I was speaking a foreign language. What kind of thoughts? Oh, things she'd observed over the years, how certain people treated me, how they made me feel, whether they seemed to value me for who I am or what I might be able to provide. I pulled out the letter. I'd been carrying it around for 2 weeks, reading it whenever I needed strength. She was particularly interested in what would happen if I ever found myself alone during a difficult time, how people would react, whether they'd show their true character. The color drained from Linda's face. She knew exactly what I was talking about. She wrote this letter right after her diagnosis, almost like she knew something like this might happen. I looked directly at Jake. She was very specific about what I should do if my husband ever abandoned me during my time of grief. I didn't abandon you, Jake said quickly. You thought I should handle my mother's death alone while you and your family took space from the situation. You kicked me out of my own house 12 hours after she died. Linda tried to jump in with damage control. Now, dear, that was just a misunderstanding, was it? Because I have a very clear memory of you telling me that Jake didn't want me there, that I should focus on my mother's affairs while you focused on your family, almost like I wasn't part of your family at all. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Jake was looking back and forth between me and his mother like he was watching a tennis match. So I followed Mom's advice. I updated my will to reflect my new priorities and circumstances. Everything goes to causes and people who actually value loyalty and family. What does that mean? Jake asked, though I think he was starting to figure it out. It means that if something happens to me, my inheritance will go to a scholarship fund for single mothers, and to my cousin Sarah, who drove 8 hours to be at Mom's funeral even though she barely knew her. People who understand what family loyalty actually looks like. Linda gasped. You can't be serious. We're your family. Are you? Because 2 weeks ago, when I needed family the most, you kicked me out of my own house. You decided I wasn't worth supporting during the worst time of my life. Jake finally found his voice. But we can fix this. We made a mistake, but we can work through it. Can we? Because here's the thing. Mom's letter was like a test I didn't even know I was taking. She wanted to see what would happen if I inherited money and whether the people in my life would show their true colors. I stood up, smoothing down my shirt. And you know what? You both passed that test with flying colors, just not the way you hoped. The next few hours were a blur of arguing, pleading, and promises that felt about 8 years too late. Jake kept insisting it was all a misunderstanding, that his family had been trying to help in their own way. Linda switched between fake apologies and barely contained rage about ungrateful wives and family obligations. But here's the thing about betrayal. Once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. These people had shown me exactly who they were when they thought I was poor and grieving. Now that they knew I was rich and grieving, suddenly I was family again. The divorce papers were filed 3 days later. Jake tried to fight it, claimed I was making emotional decisions and not thinking clearly. His lawyer suggested we try mediation, maybe counseling. My lawyer, the same sharp woman who'd helped me update my will, just smiled and reminded them that abandoning your spouse during their time of grief probably wouldn't play well in court. The furniture store business went under. 6 months later, turns out they'd been counting on family money to save them, and when that didn't materialize, they couldn't make their loan payments. Jake had to move back in with his parents and take a job selling cars at a Toyota dealership. Linda tried reaching out a few times, wanting to rebuild our relationship. She even suggested that the inheritance money was causing problems and maybe it would be better if I donated it to their church. I sent her a very polite card thanking her for her concern and letting her know I'd already made my charitable giving decisions. As for me, I kept Mom's house, turned it into a cozy retreat where I spend weekends reading and gardening. I also started the scholarship fund she'd suggested. It's already helped 12 single mothers go back to school. Sarah and I are closer than ever, and she keeps Mom's memory alive by texting me random memes at 2 a.m., just like Mom used to do. The best part? I met someone new about a year later, someone who brought flowers to Mom's grave on the anniversary of her death without me asking. Someone who understands that loving me means loving the people who made me who I am. Jake and Linda learned that money doesn't buy you love, loyalty, or family, but losing money sure does show you who your real family is. They had their chance, to be there when it mattered, and they chose differently. Mom always said that people show you who they are if you just pay attention. She was right about that, and about pretty much everything else. Her final gift wasn't just the money, it was the clarity to see what I deserved and the strength to demand it. Sometimes the trash takes itself out, and sometimes your mom, even after she's gone, helps you see that you're worth so much more than you ever imagined.